Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Veg Networking Canada. We are going to begin, as we always do, with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge, honor, and respect that many of us are located on the traditional unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. We're here for another episode of Veg Networking Canada, where vegan plant-based companies connect and collaborate. Today, we have a spotlight and special guest. He is a former software executive, former meal kit and food truck business owner, a recipient of a cease and desist from McDonald's for their creation, the Big McInnes. That's when they found out that they were onto something. He is a leader behind the world's first publicly traded vegan fast food company. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the co-founder and CEO of Auberger. Welcome, James McInnes.
Thanks so much for having me.
We are happy to have you. Thank you so much for carving out some time for us today and going through these amazing set of questions that we have for you. And the first one is on a personal note. Can you tell us a little bit more, in the audience who's going to be listening later on, what's your personal vegan plant-based origin story?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess for me, it started with a health journey. And I think that's a pretty common thing that people are like, looking for a healthier lifestyle. So I would say I really kind of started on a plant-based diet. I didn't really yet understand what veganism was all about. But I was just really like looking at, improving some of my health conditions. So I was like diagnosed with high blood pressure, like when I was like in my early 30s, and I went plant-based for like a month. I was never planning on staying plant-based. I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna do this for a little bit and see how it goes. But I felt so much better after like only a month, after kind of the withdrawal symptoms were gone. But I really kind of felt amazing after that, and I just stuck with it. And I had significant improvements to my health. So that's kind of how it started for me. And from there it kind of like progressed to I think more doing it for the animals and doing it for environmental reasons versus like strictly health reasons. But yeah, I mean, there are all good reasons to do it, but that's kind of where I came from.
That's really great for folks to hear. It could be personal for them, or maybe family members that have high blood pressure, and just more kind of, although anecdotal, but more sort of proof that plants are very powerful and can actually act as medicines. That's very, very interesting how you got your start. Shifting gears now from a personal to business, your entrepreneurial origin story, we talked about it in the beginning. You had a meal kit business, a food truck business, you got the cease and desist from McDonald's. Can you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial story, kind of like where it sparked, where it started, and where you're at now?
Yeah, like, I mean, I started in a different industry. I mean, I started in finished technology. So my background's in like educational backgrounds in software. So yeah, I mean, I started in that industry in the early 2000s, and I founded and ran a financial technology company for about 7 years. But actually, part of me kind of getting out of that business was, a focus on my health, and was my plant-based journey, because part of it was that, I sort of, I wanted to do something good for the world, and no offense to anyone in finished technology, but it's not like, you're doing necessarily something super great for the planet, or, great for other people. It's really just kind of like a money-driven industry, which, nothing wrong with it again, but it's just, for I think someone that wants to dedicate your life to making positive change, it's not the best field to be in. So that's what caused me to shift into, plant-based industry. And, really Auberger did not start as a business, and for me, it's, this is, it's a passion for me, so I do this because I love it, and that's why I do it, and no other reason than that. But, it really started as this sort of like really grassroots movement of people just coming together and like enjoying like fruits and vegetables, and like, it was very much like this, this community or movement. And then, as the business kind of evolved, we just figured out more and more ways to sort of expose people to the benefits of a plant-based diet, and that's where we kind of got into fast food.
Really, really interesting. Yeah, like wholesome beginnings, grassroots beginnings. And we've heard it before, like people are maybe doing something else and then they see a gap in the marketplace. They want to do something that's more fulfilling. So that's sort of the path that you followed, entrepreneurial start. Really, really interesting. Being in the plant-based space, being a pioneer in the space, the world's first publicly traded vegan fast food company, what are some trends that you're seeing in your industry?
Well, I mean, like obviously, I think the trends that we're seeing the bigger chains starting to wake up and realizing that they need to offer some plant-based options. So, I mean, I think we're seeing the mainstream adoption of plant-based food, which is awesome. It's actually, and it's great for us too. Like I'm happy that big chains have plant-based options, even though like obviously we're competing against them. But the key is though that I think they are really they're able to expose more people to a plant-based diet. And if someone has a burger at another major fast food chain, a plant-based burger, and they like it, then I believe they're going to seek out more plant-based options, and they're gonna want to try an entirely plant-based chain at some point. So like us. So I think I think we're seeing that kind of trend, and I think it's really encouraging. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, again, it just creates more people that are plant-based customers, which is, I think, good for everybody.
Absolutely. And in the space, we've had other special guests in the CPG space talk about trends in terms of like packaging or environmental sustainability. Is there anything like that you're picking up on as well too?
Yeah, like we are actually so our new line of packaging that is going to be released is going to be 100% compostable. So the compostable packaging thing is it's actually it's tough to get there because especially with COVID, like in supply issues, packaging industry has been crazy. So but yeah, so we're basically set to be like right now we're plastic free, but we're set to be 100% compostable within about 4 or 5 months. So once all of our packaging arrives. So the cool thing about that is that it'll really allow us to do 100% landfill diversion for our consumer-based packaged products. And part of our plan with that is to actually have composters in our restaurants so that people can just put all their stuff in the compost and then it just goes right back into soil. So the idea here, I think, is like we really want to be like the most sustainable fast food chain out there, and yeah, packaging is part of that for sure. And and we look at things like energy consumption with our equipment, so it's all super high efficiency equipment, and and there's a lot of different factors I think that you need to look at when you're looking at sustainability and environmental stewardship. So because I mean, obviously, as you guys know, just eating plant-based is the most significant thing you can do, but again, we want to be leaders, and I think that's kind of like an important part we do. So I think that's obviously the direction we're going into, and I think it's hopefully other people are going to follow.
Yeah, I'm sure they will follow. Again, pioneering different avenues within the space. It's funny, we actually have a member of our group of vegan accountants, and was corresponding with him over the weekend, and he actually just got a on the counter, I forget the brand, but on the counter compostable, you put your compost in and it turns it right into dirt kind of thing. So it's really interesting what hearing what you're talking about, of like kind of almost having that at the store level sounds incredible. And yeah, really glad that we asked you that question, because that's really, really exciting to be moving there in 4 to 5 months and being fully compostable and already being zero plastic, which is interesting. One more question, if I may, on the topic of trends. Asking this because of our member in Spotlight that we had last week, who's a vegan nutritionist, and she was talking about trends towards moving away from diet culture and really nutritious food. Being in the vegan fast food space, is the idea to stay fast food, or is the idea as well to maybe introduce healthy fast food? Like, can you talk to that at all, or does that make sense?
Yeah. So I guess for us it's interesting because I think there's always a balance between health and indulgence that as a restaurant you need to be mindful of, because if you make things too healthy, then, people aren't going to want to eat them probably. At least, or you just sort of like go towards a very small segment of the population. And same thing, if it's too unhealthy, then you're going to, again, kind of pigeonhole yourself with people that, aren't necessarily eating consciously for their health. So but this is one of the reasons that we make our food. And most of our food has 3 or 4 ingredients in it, like our chicken patty, for example. Like we don't use like commercial products like Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods or that kind of stuff. And part of the reason that we don't do that is that we try to stay away from highly processed, plant-based products. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and they have their place and they're great, but we just find that people that are not vegan, they come to us because we're healthier fast food, and it's the reason that they come to us because, when they hear the word vegan, they think healthier, right? So when they come in, they really like having, more natural products and simpler ingredients. And vice versa for many vegans, we're like an indulgence, like we're like the junk food, sort of like for them. So we always try to really find this balance in our food where, we have some menu items that are deep fried and some that are not. We have some like salad wraps and we have some loaded fries or whatever. So I think it's all about finding that balance in your menu. And yeah, and of course, we're also very mindful of the whole allergen thing, because there's a lot of people out there with allergies. So for example, we're nut free, which a lot of vegan restaurants, use cashews for cream sauces or other things. So we're nut free, and that's, it's which is again good for people that obviously have allergies. But we get a lot of people coming to us because they have a dairy allergy, or they have an egg allergy, or a shellfish allergy, or whatever it is, right? And they don't feel comfortable eating at a normal fast food restaurant because they're not very allergen friendly. So we really, whether it's gluten free or soy free, or we have an option for almost anybody that comes into the restaurant, and we are always trying to move towards the most sort of allergen neutral environment, because it's that's another sort of subset of people that that come to a restaurant for that reason alone.
Well, I'm glad that we drilled down a little bit more into the menu, because that's totally a differentiator. You're not just a vegan fast food joint that's white labeling common products and then kind of pawning it off as your own, and then moving into really honoring and respecting allergens, I think is super important. I think that's a whole nother trend in and of itself. So it's really, really interesting. So moving on, the next question, always kind of start by saying no right or wrong answer. Maybe you've done it and it didn't work and you're trying something new. Maybe it's in the pipeline. Maybe you do many things that we don't know about. So the next question is, does Auberger support any charitable organizations?
Yeah, for sure. And we always have, actually, since our beginning. So we work right now mostly with the Save movement. And so in every grand opening of our stores, we donate half the sales to the Save movement. We do special events as well. We work also directly with some animal sanctuaries, doing events where they sell their swag in our restaurant, and we donate part of the sales to those organizations as well. So every year we donate thousands and thousands of dollars to vegan charities, whether it's people at the Save movement or other vegan charities. But that being said, we don't work exclusively with vegan charities. We also do different social justice organizations. So we did a big donation with Black Lives Matter last year. We did another one with the LGBTQ charity. So we really our focus is social justice and vegan sort of organizations, because we really feel they're underfunded, to be honest. And I think too, when you create that type of community, we always find that when we support them, we get supported in exchange. So it's a really important relationship, and especially if we go into a new place, you go to a new city or wherever you are, that's the one great thing about the vegan community, is that there is this sort of support just from that community alone. So yeah, I mean, we always have been really, it's always been really important for us to support and donate to all these causes.
Well, animal sanctuaries, we all know that's amazing. The Save movement, we all know that's amazing. Was not expecting sort of the other answer that you gave in terms of social justice and human rights, but totally makes sense, totally lines up, totally synced into everything that this movement has to offer. So very, very incredible. Thank you so much for all that work that you do for those charities and those movements. The next question is, as it relates to being a business owner, as it relates to being an entrepreneur, can we pick your brain a little bit, and maybe you can give us one of each, or just one is fine. A book, podcast, or app that you find very valuable as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I would say there's one book called The E-Myth, and I don't know if you've read that before, but it's interesting because it kind of talks about that to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to have a few different aspects of the puzzle, right? There's you need a technician, you need a manager, you need an entrepreneur, so there are definitely a few resources out there, but to be honest, I haven't read a lot of books on entrepreneurship, and I haven't done a lot of that kind of stuff. I guess I'm just too busy creating or doing my own stuff, so it's one of those things where I think when you're when you're living that lifestyle and you've done it for so long, it's very hard to sort of stop doing it and to just read a book about it or whatever because you're too busy creating or whatever. So yeah,
totally valid. And we've actually had folks give that same answer, I'm too thick in it to pay attention to what other people are doing. I'm busy creating and doing exactly what you said. And that one that you the one that you did give though, the E-Myth, for those who don't know, fabulous book about trying to focus on what you're great at and bringing in people who may not be or who may be great at what you're not great at, and building that team, which I'm sure is going to be part of the advice that you give a little later on, and part of the big reason of your success, James. So next question, what and who inspires you from a company level? Maybe it's a local company, obviously the charities that you work with inspire you. Maybe it's a global company that has nothing to do with the fast food industry. But that is the next question: is what is some companies or a company that inspires you in your business? Oh, we just got you on mute.
Oh, sorry about it. I'm always inspired by technology companies. I think for me, just having a tech background, it's so it's so important to sort of understand where the technology in general is going in the world, right? So for example, EV technology or metaverse technology, all that kind of stuff. Because for me, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take my technology background and put it into the plant-based food industry, whether that's with restaurant technology or manufacturing technology or technology for how to grow food or whatever. So I would say I have a deep interest in on the tech side of things, because I think the answer is the answer, how are we going to win this war on people destroying the planet? The answer always is the technology solution, because it's sort of the only way that you can really get a competitive advantage, right? So you can't really get that kind of competitive advantage unless you have the technology, right? And so this is why I'm so excited to be developing such cool technology at Auberger, and there's so much more that we're going to be doing because again, how do you compete against a huge chain like McDonald's? And same thing, how does Netflix compete against Blockbuster? How did any of these companies compete? The answer always comes back to technology, because it's not enough just to say, oh, hey, we're going to create good food. It actually is not enough, because you have to now think we need to create good food, but it has to be at a price point that is competitive, and that's the tricky part. And how do you apply the economics to it? So yeah, I mean, the companies that I'd say I love to follow are Tesla, and even the big companies like Apple and Facebook and that kind of stuff. Anything tech related, I think is so cool and is much needed in the plant-based space.
Absolutely much needed. And given your background and your clear passion for that type of an answer, I'm sure we could spend a whole hour just talking about food tech, future of food, and how that integrates. So that's very, very interesting. Thanks so much for sharing some companies that inspire you, and more so like a sector that inspires you and can further the movement. So usually this is our last question, but we have some 4 bonus questions for you after this one. So with that being said, what is some advice that you have for business owners and entrepreneurs? And you can pick one or kind of give a broad answer, but coming maybe from the perspective of somebody who might be looking at becoming an entrepreneur, maybe somebody who just started, maybe somebody in the middle of their journey, or maybe somebody looking at an exit or going public or something like that. Do you have any advice for business owners and entrepreneurs, James?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is like, I think when anyone is considering becoming an entrepreneur, so I mean, I guess I'll start with that. When you're becoming an entrepreneur, I think that the one thing that maybe people don't really understand is like, there is a sacrifice to being an entrepreneur. It's like, it's not an easy path, right? Like, it's like, it's, you know, it's a long journey. It's, you know, underpaid for many years. It is financial insecurity. It is like sleepless nights. It's all that kind of stuff. So, but you know, the reward obviously is that you're doing hopefully something that you love and you're passionate about. So it justifies that sort of like that hardship. But you know, you really have to be, I think, in the right place in your life and around the right people as well. You know, because if you're with a partner that doesn't support it, or you know, you have like huge financial commitments, it's hard to quit your job and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna go do this startup and, you know, not bring a paycheck in for a couple of years. Like, you know, so I think you have to be in that sort of like that right environment. And so I always kind of tell people is like, you know, make sure like you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to support that journey, because it's not enough to just you know, just say, I'm going to do what I love, you know, whatever. Although that's the reason that you're an entrepreneur, it's not, you really need that support system in place. It's really hard without it. But yeah, I mean, I think if you look like later down the path, you know, I think if you do have that, you get started, you know. Now the next question is like, and this is actually the hardest part, is like, how do you grow? And I think I always tell people that is the hardest part is growth, because there's always a balance between how much capital you have, how much capital you want to raise, and how much you're spending, and balancing that out, and how much equity you're giving away, you know, in your business along that path, right? So, I mean, I see like a lot of entrepreneurs like raise a lot of money early on, and you know, give a lot of equity away, which hurts you later, right? It's not something you think of. It's like, oh, I wish I'd raised less 3 years ago. I would have owned, you know, 40% of the company instead of 5, or whatever it is, right? So I think entrepreneurs have to be careful about, you know, diluting themselves too much, because if you're working at your startup and you own 5% of it, then you're kind of you just have a job again. It's almost like you haven't really necessarily like built yourself any equity. So it's always a balance there, and we've always been like really conservative on the amount of money that we've raised. We've always been really raising the least that we can, just trying to sort of like get by and run a really lean, efficient business. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I think it's not a bad thing to be like sort of like on the edge of your financing needs, because it also helps you to be more efficient, right? If you're like, and if it's almost like if you have too much money, then you just don't care or something. It's like, but if you need to watch every dollar, and you need to like, you know, make sure that your labor is this percentage, because if it's not, you're not going to make money. You really are more focused on like how well the business is running, which helps you tremendously later on. Like, if you build a good model, a good business early, then you're going to be profitable much earlier, and you're going to figure out those things earlier, and you're going to have to raise less money later on. So I think that's, you know, that's a little bit about that. And then I guess lastly, like, you know, on the whole public thing, I mean, I guess we can talk about that in the bonus questions probably, but yeah, going public is a whole other like ball of wax, so to speak. So it's
Absolutely.
another conversation.
Yeah, incredible answer in terms of advice. Like, again, obviously do what you love, have a passion for it, but make sure that there's people around you who are going to fill in gaps that you might not have. So it doesn't just turn into a hobby or a charity, but it actually turns into a business. Amazing. So let's dive into that question about going public right now. When should a company go public and why?
Well, I guess the sort of there is no really right answer. I think it's really we went public for a few reasons. One of the reasons was that it was sort of like an extraordinary moment in the market for plant-based companies. Like it was like there was like quite a few plant-based companies going public, and the valuations were good, which I still think, to be honest, that they're fair. And I think that if you look at where the world's going to go, I think that the whole plant-based sector has a lot of growth, ahead of it. But so that's one thing. But really, I think the key is you want to go public when you are really looking at, you're just sort of on the verge of like going profitable, and you're on the verge of like explosive revenue growth. Because in the markets, you have a whole new sort of like level of expectations, right? Like where your financials are public and people are looking at how your performance was in the last quarter, and like when you're a private company, like no one really cares that much, because maybe your investors care a little bit, but there's a lot more like understanding about like, okay, like whatever, we had a bad quarter, we'll fix it next quarter. In the public markets, like the expectations that every quarter you're going to be growing, every quarter you're going to like have record sales, every quarter it's going to be like blockbuster growth, and like and so I think you want to kind of make sure that you're in that stage, and you're not in like sort of like an R&D stage, or like in a stage that's too early. So for us, we really were in that stage where we had really spent years like developing the model and developing the food, and we felt like we really had something that we could now just grow. So yeah, and I mean, for us, it's been really successful. Like we've opened 5 new locations since we went public. We sold 3 additional franchises. Like we have 10 more locations in development. So for us, there's like, we are in that sort of like high growth phase. But again, for the market, it can't have the growth can never happen quick enough, or it can never happen soon enough. So it's but for me, I love it. I don't mind it, because I feel like we operate well under pressure, and we have that kind of culture where the pressure sort of drives us forward and lets us expand more quickly, which is a good thing. I mean, we need to expand quickly to help the world and have people eat more sustainably and better and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, for us, it's great, but again, it's definitely not for everybody. And I would say you just have to make sure that you look at all these factors before you go public.
Absolutely, everything you said, totally. And to your latter point there, again, that's where those good people, having those good people around you, are going to come in and help give you some insights and figure out if and when is the right time, and have that plan. Really interesting to hear. It sounds like the culture of Auberger has a culture of almost like athletics, sort of that competition, that drive, that firing well under pressure. I absolutely love that in culture and businesses. I think that's very, very valuable. So that's incredible to hear. You touched on franchises. You touched on your growth. That's the next question that we have for you, which is, what's involved in buying a franchise, and what type of entrepreneur does well in a franchise environment?
So yeah, I mean, so the steps involved in buying a franchise are, step one obviously is like kind of like the interview process. So the application, the interview. So people can go to our website. We have like a bunch of information about like the franchising, and what it is and how it works, and that kind of stuff. FAQs, like how much money do you need, and all that kind of stuff. So basically, people would just go to our website, auberger.com, fill out the franchising application, and then from there we sort of like we look at a number of factors. We look at their background, and the reasons for doing it, and obviously like if they're financially like able to open a franchise, because it is like a sizable financial commitment. And then we kind of like, we have an interview several stages of interviews with different people in the company. I always interview all the franchisees that come into our system personally, because again, I just want to make sure that these are people that we want to work with and people that understand our mission and we're here for the right reasons. So and I think the type of people that do well as franchisees are the people that have the passion for it. So, we're always looking for people that are doing this for the right reason. And, and we do get a lot of people that are vegan or plant-based or vegetarian that want to have a business that matches their ethics, because there's not a lot of businesses out there that you can do that match what you believe in, right? Like, okay, I'm a financial advisor, but I'm vegan. That's what I'm really passionate about, or whatever. So it is really hard to match what your passion is with your day-to-day job. And I think the big sort of like interest for people getting a franchise with us is that it gives them opportunity to live that sort of life. It's like, wow, I can have a vegan business and I can open like 1 Auberger or 5 Aubergers and be a part of this like world-changing company and like contribute my efforts to it and give my feedback and how do we make the processes better, or what are cool products that we can maybe launch, because again, for us, we always look at franchisees that kind of like bring something to the organization as well, because so we get a lot of people that have like real estate background or construction background or a background in technology or a background in different areas. So which is great for us because it enriches us, right? So we're always like really receptive to like feedback and ideas. Or someone has an idea like, hey, there's an awesome menu item, you can do this, it's amazing. So these are things that we can sort of like implement. So, but yeah, and then basically, after that, we, there's obviously like, legal paperwork, a huge document that is very long to read, but for people that have the time and interest, they can read it, or their lawyer can. But yeah, I mean, we always recommend people like thoroughly read the documents and all that kind of stuff. And then you pay the franchise fee, and then we basically then sort of like work with franchisees to help find a location. So location is like so important in franchising. It's so important in really, especially in the restaurant business, because if you're on this corner or that corner, like it's like or this plaza versus that plaza, it's a difference of like, hey, twice as much traffic go to your restaurant or not, right? So and that's where really like we find that the franchisees have typically that local knowledge that we don't have, right? So, and this is something where if we're franchising in Texas or something like some place that I've never been, I don't know what is a good spot, right? So this is where like the franchisees bring that local knowledge, and it's so important to the organization that they know that this is a good spot because they lived there for 20 years and they know that this plaza is dead. No one goes there, don't open there. So it's like, so that location search is a big part of it. And then really, after that, once we find a location, then it's very kind of systematic. Like we have all the designs and all the prototypes for building the spot out, and then we just really just get it built and then open. So it's and then there's obviously a big training program and all that kind of stuff. Franchisees get trained right from how to maintain the equipment, to how to make every menu item, to how do you mop the floors. We always want franchisees to know everything, because ultimately it's their business, right? So they're the ones that are going to care about it the most. So we really sort of focus a lot on the training, because that's how we have the consistency across the company.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the benefit. Those are the people who are going to do really well, is somebody who wants to have a turnkey business, not necessarily build something right from the ground up, right? Those are the people who, you're right, like, I have these values, this company's turnkey, I have the capital, I'd like to deploy it here, this makes sense. That's incredible. Is there anything that you want to mention for your franchising in particular that might be like coming up and exciting, or can you maybe mention that or not yet? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think generally speaking, like if you sort of look at, our franchising strategy, it's really broad. So we geographically, so we're opening spots in Victoria, Calgary, Ottawa. Obviously, we have our base here in Southwestern Ontario, but we're soon going to be, entering the U.S. market. So I think that the key here is like you have a lot of brands that maybe they'll franchise just in Toronto market or something like that, and then they become like a Toronto franchise brand. And it's something that we really don't want to be. We don't want to be like just a Canadian fast food chain. We want to be like a global chain, right? So we're really focused on right now, I think, testing that geographic reach. And because what's so exciting about that is if the model works in Toronto and works in Vancouver and works in Halifax and it works in LA and New York and whatever, and if the model works in all those places, the exciting thing about that is that it provides the proof of concept that it can work anywhere. And the more cities that you have this model working, the bigger your scope of where you can go. So I think once right now we're in 6 different cities, and we're successful in those cities. So now the question is like, where else can we go? Is this going to work everywhere? And if it works everywhere, then the opportunity for growth is tremendous. And I think that's what franchisees kind of see. And that's where the excitement is, because if you open, say, a site in New York City, for example, and it does well, maybe you open 20 more. And that is really the key to franchising. The key to franchising is multi-unit, having like lots of restaurants. And that's how you really, I think, do really well in franchising. The people that are sort of like really into franchising know that. And that's why if you look at the really successful franchisees, most of them have like multi-units. So we really want to support people like that, because again, we want to make people successful and have a great business, and support their passions while they're doing it, and make the world a better place. And for us, there's nothing better than that. So, and same with franchisees. For them, that's what they want too. So that's really what we set up. We set up this model that allows people to run this big business. We want franchisees to run big businesses. So that's kind of our goal, right?
To infinity and beyond. That's
right. Totally.
How cheesy is that? Okay. Last, is there anything when it comes to your franchises in Canada from a financing perspective that there might be news to mention, or no, not yet?
Yeah. So actually, the one cool thing about the franchises, franchising in Canada, is that we do have like amazing financing programs through CIBC and through BMO and RBC. So we offer like up to 90% financing on the equipment and leasehold improvements, up to $350,000. So and they're also government-backed loans, which is pretty cool. So there's less personal risk for franchisees on the loan amount if, God forbid, something didn't work out. But basically, the exciting thing about it is that it really gives more people access to franchising, because you just don't need much capital. You can spread that loan out over like 10 years. So I think it's in Canada we have these great programs that are backed by the government and administered through the big banks. And and I mean the banks, they love our business model and they believe it, and that's why they're willing to offer such an aggressive financing rate for prospective franchisees. So for us, again, if you can franchise, up to 90% of the restaurant, then it just means you can open more restaurants with your cash, right? Your cash goes further to open up more units, and that's really what we want. We want to encourage that. So yeah, so we're excited about that. And I think it's a great business opportunity for people that are sort of like in that position.
Awesome, thank you so much. That's incredible news. 2 final questions for you. We're going to start with, why did you and your team spend years building a brand and then decide to change it?
Yeah, so that was a crazy period of time, but yeah, so our company started out with a different name. So we went public with a different name. It was called Globally Local at the time. And it's interesting because when you start a company, you don't necessarily know where you're going to go, where you're going to end up. So when we started the company, we were doing like organic produce, and like it was like a produce company, which kind of makes sense for a name like Global Local. But then we kind of evolved into fast food, and then the whole like lawsuit with McDonald's, because we were actually going to change our name to like Vegans, but then McDonald's like stopped us from doing it. Because they ended up using that name, I think, in Europe or something for something that they're doing. So they didn't like that. Even though my last name is McInnes, it didn't really matter. So to be honest, like so when we went public, we'd already started the process of rebranding. Probably like 6 months before that. It was a long process of like, how do you find a name? It's so hard to rebrand. What do you name it? And that kind of stuff. And so the hardest thing is actually the trademark. So the kind of catalyst behind this was that we were not able to get the trademarks for Globally Local in the US or in Canada. So there was like objections from someone else in Canada, and someone else actually had the mark in the States for food use. So basically, we're kind of faced with a challenge where it's like we can't keep investing in something that potentially have that kind of like risk. So we have to change it to something. So basically, we worked with some incredible branding companies. Two different branding companies actually out of Toronto, and again, long process of like what names and what do people think about it, and we ended up settling on Auberger. And it was interesting because when I first heard the name Auberger, I was like, oh, I don't like it. It's kind of like, it's like offensive to vegans or something. And I think like why are we calling vegans like odd or weird? But then the more I thought about it, it's not actually for vegans, really. It's for people that aren't vegan. And if you're not vegan, then you have a like when we asked like 100 non-vegans what they thought of Auberger, like, oh, we love it. It makes sense. You guys are vegan. You're doing things differently than other people. It's like, okay, like, yeah, it's odd, yeah, because to them it is odd, you know what I mean? So we really had to get out of our bubble, out of our like vegan bubble, and because vegans, we know that we're not weird. We're doing like everyone else is weird. So it's this whole funny like thing where it's like who's weird, who's odd, like they think we're odd, we think they're odd, like all that stuff. But so we love the humor around it, because I think humor is something that actually connects people of where you have differences, right? Like if you're like this and I'm like this, and we have these stark differences, and we can laugh about something, then it actually brings us together right away. So we ended up taking the plunge and doing the name change, which was like super like, I mean, we're still changing things like a year later or whatever, almost a year later. So, but yeah, I mean, everything from the packaging to your signage. And, luckily for us, when we changed it, we were just about to open, 5 new locations. So we really wanted to make sure that we weren't like opening them under a different brand and then having to spend all this money rebranding. So the timing was like, when we had to do it, like just after we went public, right before we're going to open all these slots. And so it was like a narrow window where we just had to do it then. And that is actually, I think when you're an entrepreneur, it's all about timing that way. Like timing is everything. If you do the thing at the right time, then, you get a good result. And if you don't, then it's not as good. So we really kind of like, I think did it at the right time. And initially, just like anything, like I don't think it mattered I don't think it would have mattered what we would have called it. Like people love and hate the name. Like it wouldn't matter what we changed to, because people are like, oh, I love your old name. And some people are like, oh, like I love the new name and I hate the new name and all that kind of stuff. So, but I mean, I knew it was one of the things, people just get used to it, and then you just don't think twice about it, and just, I don't know, it's Auberger and it's great. So
No, yeah, it is great. And that's I know that like, just listening to when that was happening, different investors and people questioning it, like why, and this is to your point, like I like it, I don't like it, whatever, but really interesting response from you as to like why you did it. And again, if we just literally talked about a brand redesign and the pillars and the vision and everything, that could be like a whole other hour conversation. So thank you for just being open and honest about the reason why and everything. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the other funny thing about Auberger is that, and I don't know if you notice this as well, or any of our customers could be interesting, but every time I see the word odd, doesn't matter where it is, I think of us. Like if I see someone else using the word odd, I'm like, oh, Auberger. So the cool thing actually about it is that you end up kind of like owning a word or something that is just everywhere. And people associate odd with vegan and with odd with us, right? And but it kind of like it kind of like gets into your head, or it gets into culture, because all of a sudden it's like I noticed like the other day that McDonald's, there was some article that said McDonald's is re-releasing an odd burger. That was like the title of the article. I was like, oh, I got it. I'm gonna open this up, and it was like they're releasing something, like it was something in Japan. They're releasing a burger that was like something, but right away it made me think of like, oh, like they're using our word, or they're using like our name or something. And so it was very interesting, like kind of reaction. And I think that's part of like, these are some of like the deeper things that are like the power of branding, because branding is so powerful, right? Branding is everything. That's why we just work with like just really, really incredible branding companies, because if you work with right people that are really good at it, you create that foundation for the business. And brand, if you build a business on a brand that is not solid and not great, then it hurts you later on, and makes it harder for people to remember your name and who are they. And like, in fact, people just used to call us like, oh, that vegan chain, because they could never remember our names. So, oh, it's like the vegan fast food chain. They just call us the vegan fast food chain. Whereas now people just call us Auberger. They don't even refer to that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's cool to see the change.
And when you tell the story about like McDonald's in the article, my brain goes, all right, McDonald's, here's your cease and desist now.
Exactly. Payback time.
I wasn't going to ask the first time because I don't like putting people on the spot and making them feel like they have to pick favorites, but it sounds like you work with two companies that you may want to just drop their name here.
Yeah, so the actual name Auberger was created by a company called Sidley. So Sidley is they're a Toronto branding company. They I guess they're most well known for like the We the North campaign with the Raptors. They like invented that campaign with the Raptors. So like, but they've done a bunch of other great work too. So they were kind of like part of that initial like naming discovery process. Then we ended up developing the brand under a different company called Concrete, and they're another Toronto branding company, and they're really more focused, I think, on like the packaging and food space. So they've done like a lot of great projects with companies like Mac and that kind of stuff. So they were fantastic to like really, I think, implement the brand. So we ended up kind of working with these two companies, and I think the end result was pretty awesome. So on Concrete, for example, they developed our own font. So like the Auberger font, it's a totally like
custom font.
It's unique to us. It's like it's all just one big art project, right? So it's totally like unique and which is so cool. And then we developed like all of our own characters. We hired illustrators, one from Giro Bibas from UK, another one from the States. So they created our odd emojis, we call them, and our chickpea character, our mascot. So again, like a lot of work with like artists and branding companies and that kind of stuff. And I mean, this is at the heart of, I think, any good brand is like the creative process. I mean, this is why for us, like the creative people and artists are like for us the most valuable types of people that we work with. So
yeah, that's the super fun and sexy part. I love it. Like many people in the plant-based vegan space, of course, not everybody, but like most of us, to your point, the community is really focused about lifting each other up and kind of sharing ideas and collaborating. It's the whole reason for Veg Networking Canada. And so the last question for you is, of course, it goes without saying, I know you don't want this for anybody. You don't want any other restaurant to go under, anything like that. So just start off by saying that. But with that being said, how did Auberger thrive while other restaurants were folding during the last couple of years? We're going to end with that, and it's a nice positive note, nice uplifting note.
Yeah, like it was actually I think it was almost by accident that we ended up really being in a position that allowed us to thrive. And I guess this is just part of an entrepreneur story again, but the foundations of that were that we had a restaurant in London, Ontario, and the street ended up getting closed for like a year for construction. They ripped up the whole street. You couldn't drive down the street. Totally inaccessible. It was actually our first location that we opened up. It was on in downtown London, and it was just brutal. Obviously, like, you go from all these people walking around coming in for lunch to no one coming anymore because people don't want to walk down the street that's under construction, basically, or drive down, etc. So we were kind of in a position where it's like, okay, what are we gonna do? Like, how do you make it through like that kind of challenge? So we ended up developing. So we knew that the only way for us to make it through it was we had to be able to operate the restaurant with one person. Like, we couldn't have more than one, just from a labor cost point of view. Like, we couldn't have more than one person working there. So the question is, like, how were we gonna do that? So we ended up putting in self-checkout. We went cashless. We totally transformed the cooking equipment. Like, we got rid of the grill. Like, we changed how we made the food. So that really, like, and we automated all the equipment. So it was like all just like push button. And we launched this concept called the Smart Kitchen, which is like an automated kitchen. The idea is that you can run the restaurant with as little as one person, and everything is just pre-programmed. So you just like push a button here, push one there, and take the food out and then just put it together. So we and the model worked. It allowed us to operate the business, survive. We made it through it. We were just happy breaking even for the year, basically, and just keeping a restaurant, paying our rent, and keeping the lights on, right? So, and then basically the pandemic hit. So we went, and then we opened Toronto using the same model. And when the pandemic hit, we'd already had developed this like super efficient, compact store model, which runs in like less than 1,000 square feet, and there's no interaction, there's no like cash being changed, which reduces like transmission of disease and like all that kind of stuff. We already had self-checkout. So we were already totally like positioned for the pandemic world, which is like takeout. We were already like just specialized in takeout. So obviously when the pandemic hit, we were just in a position that people were already coming to us for takeout, and obviously, as everyone knows, people got lots of takeout during the pandemic. So for us, we did really well. We were busy during the pandemic. We were trying to open as many restaurants as we could during the pandemic, and landlords were like, "Hey, come this way." Like, no one else wants to rent any space. So it actually kind of opened up an interesting opportunity. We were like aggressively expanding, looking for restaurant sites, building a restaurant business, whereas other restaurants were like just trying to survive, closing or putting the brakes on expansion, because most restaurants were, had dine-in heavy businesses, right? So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like how we made it through it, and I think it was one of those like really wild experiences that just goes to show you, like, sometimes the challenges that you face as an entrepreneur like can sometimes benefit you later on unexpectedly, where you don't know how it's going to benefit you.
Totally. Totally. That's like the epitome of the entrepreneurial spirit. Like, you're so modest. You started out by saying like, oh, it was an accident and this kind of, but it's like, no, like, we were hit with this massive challenge. We took our entrepreneurial spirit, we pivoted, we did something completely new, and that's what set us up for success when the next obstacle came. So super inspiring story. I don't know how many people know that. That's incredible. Like I said earlier, you just must have such an amazing culture among the franchisees and all the employees that work within Odd. So amazing conversation, James. Thanks so much for taking an hour. Before we let people know where they can find you on the web and on Instagram and the stock ticker, is there anything that you want to mention that maybe we forgot to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the last thing is the like, obviously, like as a public company, the cool part about being a plant-based public company, the really interesting thing about that is that, and this is the reason that I think again, that we the benefits of being public is that anyone can support you from anywhere. You don't have to like necessarily like go to a restaurant and eat at a restaurant to support us. You can go out and buy our stock from anywhere in the world and support a vegan company. And I always thought that was like a really cool thing, whereas that you can get this idea of like, I want to invest in a business that I believe in, that I think is going to, change the world. And making it easier for people to support a plant-based business that way. So it's really cool, again, to have that sort of like ability to do that, you know, as a public company. And that's you know, one of the big reasons that we did it, just to give the average everyday person access to being able to invest and support in companies that they believe in. Because in my opinion, there's not enough plant-based companies out there. There's not enough vegan companies. There's not enough green companies or technology-focused companies that are, you know, doing positive things for the planet. We need a lot more of that stuff. And I think that we're going to see this big green economy coming, where people that aren't on the right side are just going to get crushed when, you know, when we start seeing the big effects of climate change and that kind of stuff. And there's going to be very little room for companies that are still exploiting and using the world, I think, in the future. And I think companies that aren't yet green, or that base the company on, you know, destroying the world, aren't going to be around long. So again, I hope that more people sort of like consider it, more companies, you know, join the sustainability like movement. And I think this is going to be a big future for anyone that's in the space.
Big future. And we gleaned so much from you during this conversation, James. Thanks so much. And you heard it here, folks. If you're looking for support at scale, you know, going public might be an option. And it's the whole concept of voting with your dollar, like you said. It's just so powerful. All right, folks. So the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture, ODD, odd. The Canadian Venture Exchange, ODD, odd. Talk to your broker through maybe your mobile app that you have that you do direct investing. Just type in Auberger. You're going to find it. You can invest anytime. This is not financial advice. This is just information and educational purposes. And lastly, we're going to tell you where you can find out more information about franchising, which is an exciting opportunity, especially in Canada with the financing arrangements that they have. You can find out more on the web, www.auberger.com, just how it sounds. And you can drool away on Instagram and also laugh a little bit with their humor that they have in their culture. And that's on Instagram at Auberger Fast Food. James, thank you so much for joining us on Veg Networking Canada. We wish you all the best in the new year.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.